This is probably going to be the first video of this kind where I'm going to diagnose a psychologist with what I'm going to call hand gesture personality disorder, where people use their hand gestures to communicate, but in a way where the hand gestures don't really correlate with what they're saying. And with Dr. Ramani, I like her and she's highly qualified, but I noticed that her hand gestures are overused, in my opinion. They're harmless, but I thought it's interesting just to diagnose another psychologist with something that is coming from someone who is not a doctor. So let's continue so I can explain what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
Because the topics that you bring are so fascinating.
They are fascinating. Everyone wants to know about them, but you're actually a fantastic interviewer too.
So thanks. I was fishing for compliments. Yeah, so,
it works.
Today we're talking about borderline personality disorder. What exactly is that?
So she starts out borderline. This doesn't translate into borderline to use this hand gesture here.
Personality disorder is a disorder.
Look, she goes, is a disorder? What does a pinky have to do with a disorder? Except being a disorder itself by pushing on your pinky while you're talking about a disorder. Ironic.
Of instability and impulsivity.
Okay, she's counting instability, impulsivity. But normally we would start with this finger and then this one. There's no official rule.
If you want to look at it that way. By instability, we mean instability in their relationships, instability in their moods, instability in their behavior, and instability in their sense of self. So the world,
it looks like she's balancing the world.
Always feels like it's sort of moving up and down.
She did. Okay, that was legitimate.
Finally, there's also
a it doesn't match.
Tremendous fear of abandonment.
Tremendous fear of abandonment. I don't get it. I don't know what intuitive hand gesture would be tremendous fear of abandonment.
That always cuts through this disorder.
Okay.
So people who have borderline personality.
People who are borderline personality. What does this mean? What? Of course she doesn't know sign language. We're not covering sign language at all. We're talking about an intuitive hand gesture that would be cross-referenced between any language. Like if I were going to Russia, they would understand this meaning me and that meaning I'm either pointing over there or I'm talking about them. Most of this, I don't see this happening.
In addition to all of that,
and that's why I call it a disorder, because it's overusage.
Instability. Live in chronic fear of real or even perceived abandonment.
Perceived abandonment. There's no match. There's no logical explanation for that to be perceived abandonment.
For example, someone even showing up late to dinner, that could be experienced as a frank
It doesn't match.
abandonment, and then their response to that
doesn't match.
Is very strong, often
very strong. Okay.
Very angry, very upsetting, not only for the person with borderline personality, but for the other people involved.
But I feel like we're all a little bit like that.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I don't disagree with you.
I don't disagree with you. Maybe.
The issue with all personality disorders is that they refer to
What is refer to? Like, I don't know.
an extreme of personality, in essence.
So she's going like that extreme towards him, like he's extreme.
Okay, so do we all get thrown off if we feel like somebody's going to leave us? Maybe to a degree, especially if we love or care about that
He copied her, maybe to a degree. So he is obliging and just going along with the flow with her, kind of like a little bit of gesture of agreement, and to kind of like a subliminal, I'm like you, or something like that.
person, but we also have enough of a sense of self to say,
We also have enough of a sense of self.
I don't want them to go, but if they go, ultimately I'll be fine. I'll cry it out for a few days. We don't feel like we're going to die. We don't feel like we have to violently or aggressively or verbally assault another person. Most of us have a very solid sense of identity.
Solid sense of identity. Okay, because she's talking about like yourself. Okay.
We may shift a little, say, oh, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, but by and large,
Oh, there she used more of her whole body. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Okay.
know I'm Romney. We know who we are.
That's right.
For a person with borderline personality, that's constantly shifting sand.
They don't have a strong sense of self.
They do not.
Okay.
They do. In fact, we would call it identity disturbance. It's not unusual, for example, for a person with borderline
For a person with borderline,
personality to want to change their name sometimes, or completely change their look and cut off all their hair, or change their color, or change how they even dress. That identity disturbance
identity disturbance? No.
can be presented in a lot of different ways.
Prevented in a lot of different ways. No, it doesn't match.
And it can be sort of throw other people off in their world, saying, I thought you had this name last week and now you have this name. So it can be confusing.
And there are 9 traits that
Yeah.
would define someone who has borderline personality. But before we get into those, how is BPD, borderline personality disorder, different than all of these other personality disorders?
So as of right now, and this will change over time, there are 10 personality disorders in the diagnostic manual we call the DSM,
Yes.
or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders.
So the disorder is just this random nothingness, no meaning. You know what? Actually, there's some benefit of doing this because you don't want to be a robot just sitting there. You don't want to be a robot just sitting there. You don't want to be like a droid just, I am a psychologist and I am going to talk about personality disorders. There are primarily X amount of, oops, I had a gesture. So, yeah, and also the moving around stimulates the body, which may help with blood flow so someone can think better. So, yeah, I'm all for the hand gestures, but if an alien came to visit us that were far advanced more than us and they looked at us and one of them was a psychologist and they're evaluating us, they would say we have hand gesture disorders.
There's also a different classification scheme called the ICD-10, or the International Classification of Diseases. I'm only making that
Diseases, that doesn't match.
technical point because people may run into that.
She often uses this when she's talking about people. Maybe this symbolizes legs, or the legs on people and
That
arms.
if they were to, for example, see a medical record.
Now, do you know if
She was about to say something and he interrupted.
dissociative identity disorder, multiple personality, what it used to be called, is one of those 10?
Dissociative identity disorder is in a separate section of the diagnostic manual under a whole series of other dissociative
Series. So she's pulling a whole series of diagnostics out of the air.
disorders.
Okay.
And it is often misdiagnosed.
Often misdiagnosed. It doesn't match. Unless this means clashing, a misdiagnosis meaning a clash. Who knows?
Borderline
Only she knows.
personality. It's a very rare.
But actually, she doesn't know consciously, so this is all subconscious that she's doing.
DID is a very.
So another term for this new medical diagnosis is that. Hold on, let me go back.
Rare disorder, and many times people who are called DID.
Yeah, so I had to think for a second what I was going to say. So I was going to say another term that could be used for this diagnosis would be, forgot again, hold on.
ID, if you will, they actually have borderline personality.
Okay, so back to my original
Yes.
question. How does borderline personality disorder differ from all these other ones?
Borderline personality disorder is unique in the personality disorders for how unstable the emotional state of the person is. They will go from angry to sad to cheerful in the same hour. You will not see that kind of emotional instability with any other personality.
So what I keep forgetting I was going to say is, because it's all new to me, I'm just thinking of this right now, is another term to call this could be subconscious hand gesture personality disorder. So that means they're not conscious of this. Even I, as I'm speaking now, I'm doing it, and I'm not that conscious of it. It's like a subconscious hand gesture personality disorder. I don't know, subconscious is all one word. So we'll go SHPD. And yeah, I can create a new diagnostic term. You don't have to be a doctor. A doctor is a respectable title that society has agreed upon for those who have achieved a certain academic curriculum and passed certain tests. And sometimes it doesn't even mean they're qualified to do what their title suggests. It just means that they have academically pleased certain people in the academic field, or through the AMA, or whoever does the certifying and all that. So it's all made up. It's I've learned this over the years. I'm 52, and I've been conditioned when I grew up, you respect people with certain titles like doctor or whatever. Yeah, generally you do, but not always. Doctors are fallible. They do make huge, supermassive mistakes. Sometimes even deliberately they screw up. And many of them have ethical issues or whatever. Most of them are great. So before putting that in the comments that I'm being too harsh, I'm just saying there are some. So I'm just saying that because of a doctor title doesn't guarantee this is a godlike person or anything like that. So each person has their different qualifications.
Bipolar is not a personality disorder.
And I have a substantial amount of medical experience and training. It's just that I chose not to pursue the course of an MD or clinical psychiatrist and all that kind of stuff. I could certainly if I wanted to, but it's not my calling in life to do that full time.
And frequently, Borderline personality disorder and bipolar disorder get misdiagnosed by
Right.
lay people.
Lay
People who are professionals in the field know the clear difference.
Oh,
The
what was that?
difference
Difference.
between borderline personality disorder, which is a personality disorder,
Okay.
and bipolar disorder,
No.
which is what we call a mood disorder, just
No.
like depression.
No.
Bipolar disorder is characterized
No.
by something called mania.
No.
Mania is a period of time, it can last 4 to 7 days, even longer,
No.
where the person has this incredibly expansive,
Mhm.
excitable mood, sometimes even irritable. They can go for days without sleep. They could talk and not stop. They'll empty everything out of their garage and you're not clear on what's going on. They'll drive to Vegas with their life savings. They'll spend. They'll have sex. They'll become very disinhibited. But that goes on for days. They will not in one day have a crash. They will stay in that sort of high for many days, and it's quite debilitating. It's not unusual for a person during a manic episode to end up requiring psychiatric hospitalization.
Yeah.
The reason borderline personality gets confused with bipolar disorder is because the person's moods are fluctuating so much.
Okay.
But if the moods are fluctuating in one day, that's more indicative of borderline personality. That's the
Well,
difference.
our founder of Med Circle actually is very open, saying that he has bipolar 2 disorder.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons he's so passionate about this company
Yeah.
to help people get on the website, sign up for that free email digest, to get the information that they need so that they can make healthier choices
Yes.
and be informed. Because like
Maybe he got some brownie points from his boss on that
you
one.
said, an expert could decide
Yeah.
if it's borderline personality, if it's bipolar, if it's all these other things. But me and most of the people
Right.
watching, we don't know.
And if that misconstrual is dangerous because the treatment for bipolar 1 or bipolar 2 is quite different than it is for borderline personality.
That's right.
And the fact of the matter is, you can have both of those disorders occurring at the same time, bipolar with borderline personality. And in fact, in the realm of mental health, that combination of disorders may represent one of the greatest treatment challenges we have in the field. It requires very, very intensive treatment for a long time.
Wow. All right. This is going to help me, and I think a lot of the viewers truly understand it. What are the 9 traits? Let's go through them.
Okay, so the first trait we'll see is fear of abandonment. That abandonment can be real or it can be perceived.
All right, so you get the point.
And by
She's really extraordinarily smart and qualified, and she's not doing anything wrong at all. I'm just saying. So I'm not saying having a subconscious hand gesture personality disorder is bad or wrong or even negative. I'm just saying it exists, and I call it a disorder because it has no logical place. It's if an almighty know-it-all, supernatural or artificial intelligence or an alien was evaluating humans making these gestures, I think they would call it a disorder. And so I think in a perfect world, those kind of gestures wouldn't be the way they are. They would be a little different than that if they existed. It's weird. Maybe I shouldn't call it a disorder. Maybe I should just call it subconscious hand gestures. Subconscious hand gestures. What do you think? Should they be called disorders? I don't know. I just thought of this as I'm watching her. It's the first time in my life that I've really tried to think deeply about this situation of hand gestures. I've thought of it before, but whether it's a disorder. So we'll have to look up the clinical definition of a. So it says here in medicine, a disturbance of normal functioning of the mind or body. So is it a disturbance? A disturbance? I don't know. And who gets to set the rule on what a disorder is? So it's going to be generally a mental disorder, not a physical disorder. Causes significant distress or impairment of personal functioning. Well, hand gestures don't do that. So I'm kind of thinking of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Like if I constantly rub my chin and all of a sudden it's turning red, then that would be a disorder. But if you're making hand gestures, I don't see how it could be causing any problem unless it just annoys a lot of people. So could the hand gesture could the hand gestures be classified as a medical condition that's mental related? Well, we know they're definitely called hand gestures, and that is a mental activity. But maybe I'm wrong about disorder. That's why I'm not a doctor. I cannot claim to be a doctor. Otherwise, I would be committing malpractice by creating a disorder that isn't one. So we could call it many things. Legitimately, something like extreme use of hand gestures, or how about illogical hand gesture, or in her case, it's a mix of logical and illogical, which would be the case for by far most people. Excessive mismatched hand gestures. So too many hand gestures that don't match the words. What would that be called? What do you think?